Hello and welcome. I'm Frank Olhurst, a contributor to Peerlyst.com community, a place for security professionals to exchange ideas and information. Today we're going to chat about the importance of securing shared files and the threats and concerns surrounding the sharing of files outside of the firewall. My guest expert today is Naotaka Honzawa. He likes to go by the name Now, as opposed to the big long Naotaka, which I think is a pretty cool name, actually. He's the product manager for Final Code, and he's joining us all the way from Japan. Now's company specializes in providing persistent enterprise-grade file security, so that makes him a real expert on the subject today. Hello, Now, and thanks for joining us today.
Hello, Frank. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to have you, and I really look forward to hearing what you have to say. I understand there are big challenges facing organizations that are looking to share files with external sources. Could you enlighten us on what some of those challenges are?
Sure. The biggest challenges in sharing files with external parties is how you can control the files that are not at your hand anymore. For example, after hitting a send button in email, you basically have no idea whether the recipient opened the file or what they are doing on your files. Maybe they have forwarded your file to someone despite your intention, or something like that.
Well, so it really comes down to once that file is out of your control, you have no idea what's going to happen to it.
Mm-hmm.
So if security is the big concern, around this, especially with data leakage and things like that and control of the data, why can't folks just, send these files as a password-protected zip file, secure them that way? What's the downside there?
Right. Password lock is very common, and people believe it is safe, but actually it doesn't solve the issues I mentioned. You cannot really control who can access your files. For example, once the recipient unzips with a correct password and extract the file inside, they are free to pass on the files to other people. Or more simply, what if the recipient forwards the zip file along with password? So you cannot really designate who can access your files with a password lock.
So a password, once somebody knows that password and they have access to that file, it's just as, the same as, throwing it out into the wind for anyone to see it. So it really does come down to controlling that access, making sure that authorized parties are the only ones that can access the file. But doesn't that mean there should be some sort of an audit trail involved? I mean, how do you know who's accessing the file?
Right. Access control is very important. An audit trail is another important capability you would like to have. The more important your file is, the more you would be interested in what the recipients are doing on your files. Are they printing out or editing and saving? These days we have technology that enables you to have both capability of access control and audit trail. And the technology is based on encryption, and you can designate who can decrypt your files by managing an encryption key.
Okay, so it's key-based security, which adds to the control of it. And that brings up another kind of interesting question about this whole concept of sharing files. How about the ease of use? Doesn't adding encryption and security and keys and all these things to shared files make it much more difficult to access those files?
You're right. Encryption sounds complicated, but the technology helps you here again. In the encryption process, the system generates an encryption key which contains information of who can open your file, from when to when or how many times, and what the recipient can do on your files, such as edit and save, copy and paste, and print out. The encryption system does everything for you. And furthermore, in this encryption process, password will not be involved at all. Still, you can designate viewers and their actions on your files. Therefore, I would say encryption is much easier for users to use and much more robust in security than password lock.
All right, that makes a lot of sense, actually. So what is the mechanism for making it easy to share these files, yet still guarantee that they're secure? I mean, you're talking about putting, this encryption around it and keys and all that. How do you keep that simple?
Basic mechanism is kind of similar to password lock. You've got to have the correct electronic key, or I would say permission information, that is managed by encryption system. So if you are given a permission to open your file or do whatever actions on the file, the recipient can open the file and do edit or print and those kind of actions in your file. So all these electronic keys are managed by system automatically. So that's why you don't have to input your password, but still you will be managed your permission to the file.
Oh, okay, that's pretty interesting. So, being as we're talking about controlling these files and keeping them secure and all that, isn't there a point in time when files should just simply go away, to be able to delete them? If, once you've sent this encrypted file out, how do you make sure that it goes away, it expires when someone shouldn't have access to it anymore?
You're right. Once the file is no longer in use, you would want to delete the file, whether it's at your hand or distributed. And actually, there are some encryption tools that let you revoke the access right. But I believe you will feel much better if you can physically delete the files remotely. Would you really leave your safe on the street? No, I don't think so. I would look for a tool that allows you to wipe out files instead of just leaving the files and revoking the access permission.
Okay, all right. That makes a lot of sense, too. I guess that solves the problem of whatever goes on the Internet stays alive on the Internet forever. If you're able to reach out and destroy those files, you can kind of make sure that they're going away.
Right.
What are some of the best practices out there that for our audience members on what they should know to keep files secure and enforce compliance and prevent data leakage? What are some of those key takeaways that we should get out of this conversation?
Mm-hmm. Transparency is the key in here. People don't like to take actions of encryption, even though they don't object to the idea of securing files, right? And most companies and enterprises have file repositories, such as share folder or contents management system. I would advise them to automatically encrypt the files in those spaces or repositories so that all the files will be protected, even though the file is moved out of the repository or shared with external parties. So from the Chief Data Officer standpoint, this approach works best in terms of enforcing a governance top-down instead of relying on each people's will.
So it's basically coming up like with policies to say that if you have a file out on SharePoint or on Box.com or something like that, they should always be encrypted, just in case someone gets access to them that shouldn't.
You got a point.
Very good. Sounds like great advice. And thank you for all that information. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Frank. I enjoyed it a lot.
Well, thank you again. That's all we have for today. Thanks for watching. And for those seeking more information on file security, please be sure to visit the blogs on Peerlyst.com. And don't forget to take a look at finalcode.com, where some interesting capabilities are being offered to keep files secure. Thank you again, everybody, and thanks for joining us.